Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of your source material and pull out the most important, surprising, and useful insights just for you.
Our mission is really to cut through all the noise and just get straight to what matters.
And today, we're doing a deep dive into something lots of people wonder about. What does it actually take to become wealthy in America?
Yeah, we're digging into this pretty significant study. They surveyed and interviewed actual millionaires to figure out, the common behaviors, the characteristics of people who built wealth successfully.
Often in just one generation, right?
Okay.
Starting from scratch.
Exactly. So forget the flashy headlines, the, lottery winners and stuff.
Right. This deep dive into the source material suggests it's less about getting rich quick or even having a huge income necessarily.
It's much more about, consistent behavior, discipline.
Okay, let's unpack this then. First off, how does this study even define wealthy? What's the benchmark?
Good question. It's all based on net worth. So basically, the value of everything you own your assets minus everything you owe your liabilities.
Assets minus liabilities. Got it.
And the threshold they used in the study is $1 million or more in net worth.
Okay, $1 million net worth. So as the source puts it, it's about cattle, not chattel, right? It's about financial independence, not just having stuff.
Precisely. And by that definition, it's actually a pretty small group in America. Only about 3.5% of households make the cut.
Wow, 3.5%? That's roughly what, 3.5 million households?
Yeah, around that number. And the study really zooms in on the group between $1 million and $10 million net worth.
Why that specific range?
Because that's the level that seems most often attainable within a single generation. It suggests it's not just about inheriting fortunes.
Makes sense.
In fact, the source notes something like 80% of millionaires are actually first-generation rich. They built it themselves.
80%. Okay, so here's where the study brings in a really key distinction, I think. It talks about PAWs versus UAWs.
Yes. Prodigious accumulators of wealth PAWs and underaccumulators of wealth UAWs.
And this is crucial, right? It's not just about how much you earn.
Not at all. It's about your net worth relative to what you'd sort of expect, given your age and your income level.
Okay, give us an example.
Well, the study uses Charles Bobbins. He's a 41-year-old fireman, combined household income around $55,000.
Okay, 55K.
Based on typical patterns for his age and income, you might expect his net worth to be, say, $225,500 roughly.
But
he's worth much more. He's managed to accumulate an above-average net worth for his group because he lives below his means, he saves, he invests consistently.
oh, so he's a PAW, a
Yeah.
prodigious accumulator of wealth relative to his peers.
Exactly. Now, contrast that with Dr. John Ashton. He's a 56-year-old physician, earns about $560,000 a year.
Wow, okay. Big income.
Huge income.
Right.
And technically, yes, he is a millionaire. His net worth is about $1.1 million.
So he meets the definition, but you called him an underaccumulator, a UAW. Why?
Because given his age and that massive income, the study says his expected net worth should be well over $3 million.
So even earning over $500,000 a year, he's falling short of his wealth potential.
Way short. And the source points directly at why. It's a high-consumption lifestyle. He earns big, but he spends even bigger.
To the point where
Despite that income, he could probably only sustain his family for maybe 2 or 3 years if he suddenly stopped working.
That's incredible. That comparison alone really highlights the difference between just having a high income and actually building wealth.
Totally different things.
Yeah.
And the study really dug into this, identifying 7 common denominators among these PAWs, the ones who successfully build wealth in one generation.
7 key factors. Okay, let's get into them. What's number 1? What's the absolute cornerstone according to this source?
Trait number 1, they live well below their means. Frugality. That's the foundational principle.
Frugality. As the cornerstone, that really flies in the face of the typical media image of millionaires, doesn't it? The big spenders.
Completely. The millionaires they surveyed, surprisingly modest in their spending on consumer goods. Like over half of them never spent more than $399 on a suit, ever.
Never more than $400 on a suit. Seriously.
Seriously. Only about 1 in 10 ever spent over $1,000.
What about other things like watches?
Same story. Only about 25% ever spent more than $11,125 on a watch. And just 1 in 10 spent over $3,800.
So we're not talking Rolexes and Armani as a rule here, at least not while they were building the wealth.
Definitely not. And what's fascinating is comparing them to high-income people who are not millionaires, the UAWs.
The underaccumulators.
Right. People like corporate middle managers, lawyers, sales pros, even physicians like Dr. Ashton. The study found those people are actually more likely to buy the expensive suits, the luxury items.
So their spending habits are directly preventing them from becoming wealthy, even with good incomes.
Absolutely. You could say they might have a great income offense, but their spending defense is just, well, leaky. The millionaires, the paws, play great defense through that frugality.
The SARS had a great anecdote about that, didn't it? The wife of a self-made millionaire who clipped coupons.
Yes. Her discipline, even when they had very little income early on, was absolutely critical to them building their wealth later. It wasn't about a sudden windfall. It was that consistent, deliberate saving.
And there was Mrs. Rule, the auctioneer, average income around $90, which is good, but not astronomical.
Right. But her net worth,
Mm-hmm.
over $2 million. And the key was her planning, her budgeting, her discipline. The study notes she knew exactly how much her family spent each year.
That level of control seems rare, even among high earners who aren't wealthy.
It is. And it extends to things like credit cards, too, the millionaires.
Yeah.
Mostly just Visa and MasterCard.
Really, not the fancy platinum cards.
Very few. Like only 6.2% held in Amex Platinum. Department store cards like Saks or Neiman Marcus, only about 25% had those.
Compare that to Robert and Judy in the study. $200 K income, but drowning in debt with 14 credit cards.
Exactly. It's a stark contrast. Are you controlling your money or is it controlling you? That seems to be the question.
Okay, so frugality is pillar number one. What's the next common trait of these paws?
Trait number 2, they efficiently allocate their time, energy, and money towards building wealth, especially through investing.
So they don't just save, they actively put their resources towards growth. This pushes back on that common excuse you hear, right? I'm too busy to manage my money.
Exactly. The study found that's a common line from high-income UAWs. But the pause, even with demanding jobs, they make the time. They prioritize it.
How? Do they have, like, specific routines?
Yes, many have a regimented planning schedule for their investments. They treat it like a critical part of their life, not an afterthought. And they tend to start planning earlier in life, too.
The source contrasted the two doctors again here,
I
right?
know.
Dr. North, the paw, and Dr. Ashton, the UAW.
Right. Dr. North, the paw physician. He's basically his own financial advisor. Spends zero on fees or advice.
Zero.
Zero. He invests in areas he understands deeply, like pharmaceuticals because he's a doctor. He rarely sells stocks, holds for the long term, even invests directly in things like farmland. His motto is basically, you can't invest without saving first.
Okay, simple but powerful. What about Dr. Ashton, the UAW?
Totally different approach. Remember, $560K income, $1 or one-ticket net worth instead of the expected $3 plus make. He has accounts at 4 different brokerage firms. Four. But a relatively small amount, actually, in securities. And get this, he spent over $35,000 in 1 year on financial advice and trading commissions for a portfolio that wasn't even performing well.
Ouch. $35,000 on advice that didn't pay off.
Yeah, and his rationale was basically that he earned enough that he didn't need to spend his own time on financial decisions. He outsourced it, but apparently not very effectively.
That's a fundamental difference in taking ownership. So when paws do use financial advisors, how do they pick them? Are they just luckier?
Not luck. They're very deliberate. The study found they treat hiring an advisor like hiring a key employee.
How so?
They get referrals, usually from trusted accountants or other successful business owners they know. They do background checks. They interview them carefully. One example, Mr. Martin, even asked potential brokers for their personal tax returns to see if they practiced what they preached.
Wow, asks for their tax returns. That's serious vetting.
It is. Whereas the UAWs, the study suggests they often hire advisors with much less scrutiny, sometimes even based on cold calls. They just don't seem to have the same process or experience in evaluating who to trust.
So the advice from the study is pretty clear. If you need help, find a good CPA, get referrals from people you trust who are already successful accumulators, and vet them thoroughly.
Exactly. Treat it like a critical business decision.
Okay, moving on. Trait number 3.
Prioritizing financial independence over displaying high social status.
This connects back to the spending, but it's about the motivation, right? What drives them?
Precisely. Paws measure their success by their net worth, by their level of financial independence. Freedom is the goal.
Whereas UAWs?
UAWs often measure success by perceived status, by possessions. They work hard to earn big so they can spend big. Life is seen as constantly trading up to the next luxury item, the bigger house, the fancier car.
The source mentioned a Mr. Friend whose father actually taught him that.
Yeah, his father's message was basically, earn a large income so you can buy the finer things. That was the definition of success passed down.
And this focus on status, on appearances, It creates financial roadblocks, doesn't it? Like living in certain neighborhoods.
Definitely. Living in a high-status neighborhood often forces you to realize, meaning convert assets into spendable income, a much higher percentage of your wealth, just to cover the higher taxes, mortgage, and general cost of living associated with that area.
So you're burning through potential investment capital just for the address.
Pretty much. The study found millionaires living in those areas might realize around 6.7% of their wealth annually as income. But their non-affluent neighbors in the same area, they might have to realize over 40% of their wealth annually just to stay there.
40%, that's huge.
It is. And it highlights a key timing difference. Non-affluent people often buy the big house in the fancy neighborhood in anticipation of becoming wealthy, hoping it motivates them or signals success.
Well, the pause.
The pause typically buy the house after they've already accumulated the wealth. They don't leverage their future for status today.
Car buying is another classic example of this status versus value thing, right?
Absolutely. Most millionaires surveyed, remember, first-generation millionaires never spent more than $30,000 on a car in their entire lifetime.
30,000 lifetime max for most. Contrast that with Dr. Ashton again, the UAW.
Right. The source notes he spends significant time and energy hunting for a deal, but on very expensive cars, like a $65,000 Porsche. And he buys a new one every year.
So he thinks he's getting a bargain, but he's constantly churning money into a rapidly depreciating asset, largely for the status.
Seems like it. Whereas Dr. North, the paw physician, keeps his cars for a long time, spends minimal time buying them. He's focused elsewhere.
The study had a great term for how many millionaires approach car buying. Something about being used vehicle prone.
Yeah, used vehicle prone dealer loyalists or shoppers. Basically, they find satisfaction in buying cars that are 2, 3, 4 years old.
Letting the first owner take that big depreciation hit. Smart.
Very smart. They're patient shoppers. Might take months to find the right car at the right price. And sometimes they buy from dealers or even individuals they have other business relationships with. It's all about value and long-term financial health, not the flashy new model.
Makes perfect sense when you frame it that way. Okay, what's trait number 4?
Trait number 4 really emphasizes the importance of partnership in wealth building, having a frugal and disciplined spouse.
Okay, so marriage matters. The study did note that, right? Something like 95% of millionaire households are married couples.
Yes, marriage is common. But just being married isn't the magic bullet. For prodigious wealth accumulation, the study stresses that both partners need to be on the same page financially. They both need to be generally frugal and disciplined.
Alignment is key.
Absolutely. And interestingly, in many of these millionaire households, the study found that the wife was actually more fiscally conservative than the husband. When paws were asked, is your spouse more frugal than you are? They often answered yes.
That's fascinating. It really highlights the teamwork aspect because if one person is saving like crazy and the other is spending freely...
It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in it, or rowing a boat with only one oar, as you said earlier. You just don't get very far.
Did this study have examples of couples who weren't aligned?
It did. It mentioned one high-income couple, not the Ashtons specifically, but similar, where both partners were described as hyper-consumers. They had no central budget or control, each making big purchases independently. Despite a good income, their net worth was stagnant because of the spending.
Contrasting with couples like the Norths, the paw doctor, and his wife.
Exactly. The Norths both came from frugal backgrounds. They planned together, budgeted together, consulted each other on significant expenditures, and consistently lived below their means. Their shared financial philosophy was a powerful engine for wealth creation.
Shared values, shared goals. Okay, trait number 5 gets into parenting, which had some really surprising findings.
Yes, trait 5 is about teaching children to be financially self-sufficient.
Now, affluent parents often spend a lot on education, right? The study mentioned tuition, especially for grad school, was a common gift millionaires received from their parents. That seems like a good investment, teaching them how to fish.
It is often seen that way, and education is clearly valuable. However, the study draws a sharp distinction between that and what they call economic outpatient care, or EOC.
Economic outpatient care? What's that?
It refers to substantial, ongoing financial gifts from parents or grandparents to their adult children or grandchildren. Not for education usually, but for consumption.
Like what? Down payments on houses, cars?
Exactly. Homes, cars, covering living expenses, sometimes even forgiveness loans that everyone knows will never be repaid.
And this is common among the wealthy.
Very common.
Right.
The study found over 46% of affluent parents reported giving $15,000 or more annually to their adult children or grandkids. Often the motivation is good, wanting to help. or maybe trying to reduce future estate taxes.
Okay, sounds generous, but here comes the surprising part you mentioned.
This is the kicker. The source material clearly shows that adult children who receive significant EOC again, beyond education support, tend to have lower net worth and lower income compared to similar adult children of the affluent who don't receive those kinds of ongoing gifts.
Wait, hang on. Giving your adult kids regular financial help actually makes them less wealthy and earn less money in the long run. That seems completely backwards.
I know, it's incredibly counterintuitive, but the data was pretty stark. For example, they look at accountants. Those whose parents gave them EOC had, on average, only 57% of the net worth and 78% of the income of accountants from similar affluent backgrounds who didn't receive ongoing financial gifts.
Wow. Why? What's the theory?
The study suggests EOC breeds economic dependency. The recipients might start to blur the lines between their own money and their parents' money. They call it the montage effect.
Montage effect.
Yeah, it's like they see their parents' capital as part of their own income stream, something available for them to spend, rather than something separate that they need to build independently.
That anecdote about the son screaming when his parents wanted to donate property really drives that home, doesn't it? He saw it as his future being given away.
Exactly. And contrast that with the story of the two sisters, Sarah and Alice.
Right. Tell us about them.
Sarah left home early, got no EOC, had to make it on her own. She became a self-made millionaire through hard work and discipline. Alice stayed close to home, received lots of EOC from Papa House, living expenses, the works. She became financially dependent, described as a type B housewife in this study, and struggled financially despite the help.
So Papa, trying to be kind, actually strengthened the strong by forcing Sarah's independence and weakened the weak by creating a safety net for Alice that removed her need to strive.
That's the interpretation. It suggests parents can inadvertently hold their kids back by shielding them too much from struggle, by solving all their problems for them, whether it's financial bailouts or, writing their college papers or making sure summer school doesn't interfere with vacation.
So what should affluent parents do instead, according to the study, if they want to raise financially successful kids?
Focus on teaching discipline, responsibility, toughness. The source mentions rules like be tough, life is, and never say poor me. Instill resilience.
And actions speak louder than words.
Right.
What?
Absolutely critical. The parents who successfully raised PAW children often shared these characteristics. One, they never told their children they were wealthy. They downplayed it.
Kept it under wraps. Okay.
Two, they lived by example. The kids saw their parents' own frugality and discipline day in, day out. Three, they did not give cash gifts that just funded consumption. They often required their kids to earn and pay for significant portions of big purchases themselves, like cars or even education.
Fostering ownership.
Right. Four, they didn't compete with their kids using money or boast about their wealth to them. And five, some strategically chose to delay inheritance distribution until the kids were older, maybe in their 40s or 50s.
Why delay it?
So the children would have already established their own careers, their own lifestyles, their own financial habits, independent of expecting a big windfall. They wouldn't build their life around the inheritance.
That makes a lot of sense. Foster self-sufficiency first. Wow, that's a powerful section. Okay, trait number 6.
Trait number 6, being proficient in targeting market opportunities, especially opportunities related to serving other affluent people.
Okay, so this links to career choices. The study did confirm that being self-employed or owning a business is strongly correlated with being a PAW, right?
Yes, most PAWs are business owners. But crucially, most business owners are not millionaires. So just hanging out a shingle isn't enough.
It's about which business, which market.
Exactly. And the millionaires surveyed often recommended specific professions for their own children, ones that tend to serve other affluent individuals because that's seen as a stable, profitable market.
Like what? Accounting. Law.
Precisely. Especially specialists in tax and estate planning. But also other fields catering to the wealthy. Specialized financial advisors, high-end real estate management, private school administrators, certain medical specialists, even security experts.
The study mentioned some perhaps less obvious industries too, didn't it, where millionaire owners were concentrated?
Yeah, things like certain types of contracting roofing, sheet metal, also waste disposal, mobile home dealerships, some specific manufacturing niches, auctioneers. It's often about finding a necessary service, perhaps unglamorous, and running it efficiently.
And the coal mining example.
That was interesting. It illustrated how difficult times in an industry can actually reduce competition, allowing the really tenacious, well-managed businesses that survive to become highly profitable later on.
Finding opportunity in adversity. Okay, that leads nicely into trait number 7.
Trait 7 really overlaps with 6, but it emphasizes choosing the right occupation, one that aligns with your abilities and interests, but also, critically, meets a real market demand.
Finding that sweet spot. The study mentioned Larry, the printing guy.
Right. Larry didn't feel he had the courage or maybe the capital to start a full-blown printing company with all the equipment and overhead, but he was a great salesman.
So what did he do?
He became a self-employed broker of printing services, very low overhead. He used his sales skills to connect clients with printers, taking a commission. He found a way to leverage his strength in a specific market niche.
It highlights that point about courage not being the absence of fear, but acting despite it.
Exactly. And self-employed people, entrepreneurs, they often deal with risk and fear daily. That constant exposure, the study suggests, actually helps them learn to manage and conquer it.
The study contrasted another lawyer and business owner here too, didn't it? Dr. Dokes and Mr. Denzi.
Yes, a great comparison. Dr. Dokes, the attorney, high income but a UAW because of spending. Mr. Denzi, a business owner, similar income level, but a paw.
Why was Denzi a paw?
He started earning and, crucially, investing much earlier in life. He lived below his means, had zero debt. By the time they were compared, Mr. Denzi had accumulated 5 or 6 times the wealth of Dr. Dokes, despite similar incomes later in life.
That just hammers home the point. Wealth is blind to your formal education or profession title. High income doesn't automatically equal high wealth.
Not at all. And the story of Laura, the teacher, turned real estate mogul.
Yeah, tell us about her.
She quit teaching, felt she wasn't suited for it. She was small in stature, didn't fit the stereotype of a powerful executive, but she went into real estate sales, became incredibly successful, eventually founded her own company.
What was her secret?
Determination, discipline, a proactive approach. She said she'd held so many different jobs since she was young, she'd developed this mindset. It's amazing what you can do when you have no alternative except to succeed.
Wow, that no safety net mentality again. Seems like a recurring theme for these paws.
It really does. Drive and discipline are key.
The study also touched on the psychological side, right? Fear and worry.
Yes. It found that UAWs, the underaccumulators, actually worry significantly more about their finances than paws do.
Even though paws might own businesses with inherent risks, why do UAWs worry more?
Their fears are often rooted in their lifestyle. They worry about having to reduce their standard of living, about their income not being enough to satisfy their spending habits, about never actually accumulating significant wealth. And given their consumption patterns, these fears are often quite realistic.
Whereas the paws.
Paws worry less about personal finances day to day, even about their businesses potentially failing. Their main financial worries tend to be more external things, like changes in government policy or tax laws impacting their investments or businesses.
Maybe dealing with those daily business risks helps them conquer personal financial fear.
The study suggests exactly that. Facing and managing risk regularly seems to build resilience.
Okay, let's circle back to that crucial difference between income and wealth, because the study really reframes it, especially looking at taxes.
Right. Income tax is the single largest annual expense for most households. And the way UAWs and PAWs handle their finances leads to vastly different tax outcomes relative to their wealth.
How so? Give us the comparison again.
Okay, take Sharon, the UAW example. $220,000 income, but only $370,000 net worth. Her income is a huge chunk, 59.5% of her total wealth.
Meaning most of her net worth is flowing through as taxable income each year.
Exactly. And as a result, she paid the equivalent of 18.8% of her entire net worth in income tax in that 1 year studied.
Nearly a fifth of her wealth gone in taxes in 1 year. Okay, now compare her to Barbara, the paw.
Barbara, same, $220,000 income, but her net worth is much higher, $3.55 million. So her income is only 6.2% of her wealth.
A much smaller fraction.
Right. And because much less of her total wealth is being realized as taxable income each year, she paid only about 2% of her total net worth in income tax.
2% versus almost 19%. That is a massive difference in how much wealth is preserved year after year.
Huge. And it underlines why most millionaires, the poor Maldives, measure their success by net worth, not by their realized income. They focus on growing the asset base, not just the annual paycheck.
Once you get into a decent income bracket, say $100K, $200K plus,
it becomes less about earning even more income and much, much more about what you do with the income you already have. How effectively you save, invest, and minimize taxes on your growing wealth.
Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. We've gone through the 7 traits, the PAW versus UAW distinction, the
Hmm.
role of spending, saving, investing, family. What are the really big takeaways from this deep dive into building wealth in one generation?
Well, first and foremost, it's almost never about winning the lottery or getting a massive inheritance. Remember, 80% are first-generation rich. And it's not even necessarily about earning a superstar income if you just spend it all like Dr. Ashton.
Right, it's much more about consistent, disciplined, often quite unglamorous behavior, stuff that happens below the radar of flashy consumption.
Exactly. It's about playing really strong defense with your spending, that cornerstone of frugality, combined with smart offense in how you earn, save, and especially invest your money efficiently.
So the core message seems undeniable. Frugality first, then deliberate planning, prioritizing saving and investing, allocating your time and energy towards financial goals, focusing relentlessly on building net worth rather than just maximizing income, and consistently living below your means.
That's pretty much the playbook outlined in the source material. Those are the defining traits of the people who successfully accumulate wealth.
And maybe one of the most surprising and potentially challenging takeaways is about raising kids. That idea that fostering independence and discipline, even if it feels tough, is ultimately a far greater financial gift than just providing ongoing financial support that might inadvertently create dependency.
Yeah, the EOC findings are really thought-provoking for anyone with children or grandchildren. Teaching self-sufficiency seems paramount.
So here's maybe something to leave our listeners chewing on as we wrap up this deep dive. If building wealth, as the source suggests, is primarily the result of things like discipline, sacrifice, planning, and focusing on long-term value over short-term status,
Rather than just chasing a higher income or hoping for luck or trying to look rich.
how might shifting your own focus towards cultivating those core behaviors, the frugality, the planning, the discipline, how might that fundamentally change your own financial trajectory, regardless of your current income level?